want to say. I got 4 things I want to say right now.
All right, major announcement. Not just how people you guys look right here.
Predictions on anything.
Predictions. Have a special one.
I think it's important to remember when people are seeing these advertisements, what these advertisements say is that sites like Kalshi and Polymarket offer the ability to trade on sports. But think about that. Nobody trades on sports. That's not a thing. People bet on sports, and that is what Kalshi and Polymarket are actually offering people the ability to do. But you can see, though, how when you then get into event contracts and sporting events, how it functions the same as gambling, right? Are you going to take the position that yes, the Lakers are going to win? Or are you going to take the vision that no, the Lakers are not going to win? But for all practical purposes, that's no different than going on a traditional sports book and just betting the Lakers or betting the Knicks.
Gambling's a very attractive, and it's such more expansive than betting has been previously, when it's been like, oh, you can bet on a ball game, you can bet on the roulette table, play cards at the casino, or you pull the arm on the gambling machine. But this is quite a new expansive set of questions to get engaged by.
There's been a blurring of the line between investing and gambling and riskier products like crypto, for example, are marketed towards and more prone to be invested in by younger people. And it's kind of the same thing with respect to prediction market platforms and sports betting. It's just targeted towards younger people, young men specifically, who are more prone to riskier behaviors. So if you have a cohort that would like to be able to gamble, but is prevented from doing so on traditional sports books, there's a huge opportunity for platforms like Kalshi and Polymarket to get in that space by pretending that what they're offering isn't gambling.
In terms of who does it hurt the most, we have already started to see information appear about how addicting the prediction markets are for, say, high school boys, who then are spending money they don't have. I remember, the lunch table when I was in high school, somebody would say, hey, anybody want to bet on the coming football game this weekend? And it was kind of a harmless form of entertainment. But now you take that in this prediction market setting where people can maybe have a credit card or a parent's credit card or every cent they have and borrow money from others in order to place the bets.
And what happens is you have professional traders who have insight into what's going to happen, betting against regular people who don't.
In a sense, you're playing against the house. You're playing against sophisticated research firms that have more information, more ability to review the historical record and bring that to bear, and therefore they have a big edge in terms of winning these bets. So it's not as if just you and your friend down the street who have the same amount of information. You are competing in this betting world against very sophisticated operations.
And the overwhelming majority of the people on these platforms are just regular people who are losing money.
And you start to see an addiction to gambling that may haunt those individuals, a share of them, and damage their lives significantly on into the future.
Kalshi and Polymarket don't want their event contracts on sporting events to be subject to state gambling laws. One of the reasons is because not every state allows their residents to participate in gambling on sports. Kalshi and Polymarket have advertised themselves as we allow nationwide sports betting. And think about it, like states like California and Texas don't allow that, but now all of a sudden they can have residents of California and Texas use their platforms to essentially bet on sports, whereas traditional sports books can't. So that gives them a huge advantage compared to traditional sports books. They also are not subject to the age restrictions that traditional sports books that are subject to state gambling laws are subject to. So 18-year-olds, for example, can bet on Kalshi and Polymarket, whereas traditional sports books have restrictions to people that are over 21. And this is a huge market. There's a huge market, especially with young men, now that the Supreme Court in 2018 legalized sports betting. And so they're advertising to young men in college who are becoming addicted on their platforms through sports betting.
And so the states are like, wait a minute, what just happened? How come the federal government has now allowed this big change with no legislation of any kind having been passed?
That's where there's so much litigation going on right now in the courts as to whether or not these prediction market platforms should be regulated as gambling operations or as trading financial derivatives. I don't believe we'd see the popularity that they have if all of a sudden they had to shut down what is essentially their ability to allow people to bet on sports. But those rules give the prediction market platforms really everything they could want. It allows event contracts to persist on things like sporting events in pop culture, event contracts that really have no purpose other than gambling. It's not that event contracts per se are problematic or should be be prohibited. It's just that if the CFTC is going to regulate event contracts, it should be for event contracts that are in the CFTC's domain. Things like, is the price of oil going to go up? That's an event contract that the CFTC has expertise in authority to regulate. But what does the CFTC have to do with event contracts on sporting events? Why should the CFTC be regulating people betting on the Knicks or people betting on who's going to attend Taylor Swift's wedding? That just doesn't make sense. And so it's incredibly problematic that the CFTC has adopted this hands-off, anything-goes view.
The whole world, unfortunately, has become somewhat of a casino.
But the former casino owner is clear. If they're going to exist, he'll set, in his words, the rules of the road. He wants the CFTC, or Commodities Futures Trading Commission, to have exclusive authority over prediction markets.
The CFTC, that's supposed to be the guardian, well, no longer the guardian. They have the power, but not the will.
Congress was very clear when it first gave the CFTC the authority to regulate event contracts that it didn't think event contracts on things like the Super Bowl, the Kentucky Derby, and the Masters Golf Tournament should be considered to be event contracts subject to the CFTC's jurisdiction. Congress said that should be treated as gambling, and we have to make sure that Congress's original intent is enforced.
I think it's going to take legislation to address this. At this point, the courts are probably not in a position, quite frankly. The Trump administration is not carrying the portfolio, not carrying the cause of saying we need to shut this down, quite the opposite. But we recognize that there are significant harms to the states, harms to individual, harms to elections, that this is a vast opportunity for insider trading that is very difficult to detect for everyone. Where you hear a clear case, there's probably 100 others that you will never know about. So Bernie Moreno came to the floor from Ohio and proposed a new rule saying members cannot place bets in prediction markets. Nobody objected, so it became a rule. It was a very rare event. And so I have a bill that says, hey, let's put this into law. Not just the rules of the Senate, let's put it into law. And let's put it into law for the House, for the Senate, for the top officials of the executive branch. So I'm going to try to get unanimous consent on my bill, but I suspect there will be some folks who may object. But here's the challenge, and that is once you have big companies making a ton of money, what do? They start making tons of campaign donations and hiring a lot of lobbyists in order to obstruct the process of legislation going forward. This points to the kind of the defects in our system now, where money plays such a big role and you end up with government buying for the powerful instead of the people. I hope we can act soon before the profits of these companies balloon even larger, because if we don't act soon, it becomes in such an entrenched interest, it'll be extremely hard to stop.